looks worried.
Okay.
You look worried.
There we are.
I am
He's
ready to go back to the old days because when people had to be here, we didn't have all this streaming stuff because technology has been a problem this week.
Okay, sound check. Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yeah, you're kind of choppy, and I've had comm issues all week too, so.
Okay, you're coming in well. We'll try to talk slow tonight.
Thanks.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. And Council member Topcock.
Yep, I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, we have Councilmember Piscoya and Councilmember Henderson in the room, and Councilmember Martinson is celebrating anniversary, so he's excused. The time is 7:02. I'll call the regular meeting of the Nome Common Council for Monday, May 22nd, 2023 to order. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll to establish a quorum?
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Doug Johnston.
Here.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Martinson is excused. Councilmember Piscoya.
Here.
Councilmember Topcock.
Manit Tunga.
And our youth representative.
That's it. Oh, youth representative is excused as well. So we have a quorum. Good evening, everybody. Moving on then to approval of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Piscoya. Any changes? No. Roll call, please, on its adoption.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
EE.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved, or the agenda is approved. Moving on to approval of minutes, we have our May 8th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to adopt these minutes as submitted?
I'll make the motion.
Second. Thank you, Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Piscoya. There are no added deletions, corrections other than ministerial. Roll call, please, on their adoption.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
EE.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The minutes are approved. That moves us into communications. We will defer item A. On page 9 of the packet is a combination from PD to the EMS folks, volunteer fire department and ambulance. We appreciate the fire department and the ambulance assisting, and thank the police department for making note of it. There is an article from the Alaska News about legal pot, more potent than ever. It's still largely unregulated. I thought it was pretty well regulated in Alaska, but this is an information item. There is a letter at page 26 from KNOM and KICY jointly talking about the ARCS tower at the rec center being damaged. And this is the state rural communication system.
Does this need any action or can this be handled administratively?
I would like to give you an update, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
And I would ask Cole to come up and talk about that antenna that we've been talking about, helping them with. Was not aware of this letter until I received the packet. So the city is looking at the possibility of dismantling the old antenna that is not used at the fire station and help them repair the tower that was there, that apparently used to be the old broadcast TV channel.
Yes.
Here.
Yep.
Okay, and we were gonna help them that way, and then, because Cole had been approached about helping to repair it. But we hadn't seen a money request. So if you're all just willing to put it in Cole's and my responsibility, we'll see if we can to get it back up.
And this is critical for emergency notifications or
This is more for those two organizations to be able to broadcast properly.
We have 3 or 4 repeaters tied into that mast, and I don't know what they all are.
I guess the other option is putting a wood pole in there. So I think it's a good idea for the city to support putting this together. So you can give us a report back if.
that's fine.
Great, thank you. Next, we have a senior exemption request that was determined to be qualified, but the time for filing was missed. What does the council wish to do with regard to the senior exemption application by Mr. John Osborne?
I'll make a motion to accept the application as timely.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Piscoya, to accept this application as timely. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Topcott.
EE.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
yes,
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Thank you. The clerk is directed to accept the application as timely. Then we have our budget calendar, information on you call, we haul, and cleanup starting Tuesday after Memorial Day through Friday of that week. Saturday being the day that trucks are out, and we encourage you to collection of bags. And just want to note and thank the cooperation between Nome Public Works and DOT. It was a quick call to mention that there was a lot of dust and dirt on Front Street, and my God, they were there that afternoon and spent time on Saturday. So thank you all for taking care of that. The dust clouds are noticeably gone today. So
I sent an email to Calvin on Saturday. They were up on Front Street and Baring, excuse me.
and then they're going to work on making sure that the parade route for Memorial Day is clean as well. We then have a email noting some allocations for fisheries disasters in Alaska from prior years in 2021 and 2020 and 20 through 2023. And that does include North Sound chum and coho salmon fisheries in 2021 and 2021 and 2022 for red king crab. More information is available on the Fish and Game website. Moving on then to the citizens' comments. Are there members of the audience who would like to address the council this evening? Please, if you would go to the podium and just being, there are people out in TV land that don't know you, if you'd state your name for the record.
Sure, I'm Barb Amarok, and I just have a question. Should I come up here now and give you a little bit of information about the item under new business, or should I come up then?
What is the item under new business?
It is item K, resolution authorizing the city manager to sign a facilities use agreement between Nome Public Schools, University of Alaska Fairbanks Campus Campus, and Bering Strait School District in the city of Nome.
Okay, as a resolution, that normally does not take public comment, so please feel free to take and make your comments on it at this time.
Okay, I will. Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for putting this on your agenda, and thank you for all you do for the members of the community. So when I worked for University of Alaska Northwest Campus, University of Alaska Fairbanks Northwest Campus between 2007 and 2013, Carol Gales and I worked hard to try to, with the support of Doug Walworth at NACTech, offer a welding training program for adults, similar to what they do for secondary students. We worked with Unilaclete. I can't remember if it was City of Unilaclete or Native Village of Unilaclete. We were just building that big marine building down there, and they included in the building these stalls, welding stalls, and Northwest Campus purchased some equipment. But that never happened the program for adults didn't happen for two reasons. One was we had difficulty lining up an instructor, a welding instructor, for all the qualifications that are required. And two was we couldn't figure out the insurance indemnity, liability part of an agreement. So I came back to work at Northwest Campus again in 2019, and Laura Davis Collins and I picked it up again, trying to get this going, trying to support a welding training program for adults with Doug Waller's blessing at the NAPTEC facility that's operated by Bering Strait School District, but through Nome Public Schools, but belonging to the city of Nome. So in Appendix B, there's an MOA that Doug Walworth has approved every year, and it's between the Bering Strait School District and Nome Public Schools. And if you look at the very first page, the purpose, it talks about NAPTEC activity being subject to the approval of the Nome Common Council. So in all the meetings that Doug and Laura and I had over the past 3 years, that was one of the things that Doug kept bringing up, is that this has to be approved by the city council. So over the past year and a half, I think, the facility use agreement that's in front of you has gone back and forth between Wayne Mowry Jr., who's legal counsel for University of Alaska System, which includes the 3 major universities, Fairbanks, Anchorage, and Juneau, and Northwest Campus, which is a rural campus of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and Michael Caulfield, who's representing the school districts. So finally, they came together on language that they all agreed with. So, and I do want to publicly thank Doug Walworth for all the support that he's provided in support of offering training for adults in the welding area, similar to what he does with secondary students. So the facility use agreement actually has been approved twice by the NAPTEC governing board, and the governing board consists of the Bering Strait School District superintendent and a board representative, the Nome Public Schools superintendent and a board member, me representing Northwest Campus, and of course Doug is the director of NAPTEC. So the governing board has actually approved the facilities agreement twice. So now it's before you for your consideration.
And can you, one of you tell us, has this been through the school board and the superintendent? And
It was approved out of school by the Nome Public Schools Board of Education and also by the Barron City School District Board of Education.
Okay, so Jamie's on board then.
A lot of this revolved around insurance and indemnity. So we've had JIA look at this. They're satisfied. I mean, I've got to say, we've been trying to get this done for 18 months with the partners, and it was it finally got actually done or agreed to when I was away last time. So now it's in front of you. We provide insurance for the building. So, and the building is technically ours. And we'll be talking later about doing a RFP, which Bering Strait School District will pay for, because the building has deteriorated, and especially deteriorated from Hurricane Merbach hastened it, but Hurricane Merbach didn't cause the original deterioration.
Looks like everybody signed it except for the city council, so we're the last ones. Looks like all the other bodies have approved it.
That's the MOA, but the facility use agreement hasn't been signed by anybody, and it wouldn't be until you all give your approval. If you don't give your approval, then we need to sign it. And I'm thinking that the MOAs goes year to year. Doug has the governing body review it every year. So the facility use agreement would probably follow suit.
So we'll get more welders in town. Yay.
And it's this, I'm glad you say that because it's particularly timely. I guess that's how you put it now with the port expansion coming up, with Graphite One having more activity, with more marine traffic in our area. We definitely need people skilled in that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, I guess, at this point? Yeah. All right, thank
Thank
you. Appreciate it. Are there others who would like to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move forth. I'm going to withdraw the next item from the agenda as well. I'd like to have a party here for this. And they're off in June. So we'll move on to unfinished business then, and we have a resolution of appreciation for Mr. Vaden for his years of dedicated service. Mr. Clerk, I'd like this read in its entirety. Do you want to read it or do you want me to?
You can.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt resolution 230501?
I will make the motion to adopt resolution 23050.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Doug Johnson. Mr. Vaden, if you would just actually come up here while I'm reading this, and I'm going to believe that it's going to pass unanimously. So. Resolution of the Nome Common Council of appreciation to Tom Vaden for his years of dedicated service to the Nome Volunteer Ambulance Department and to the community of Nome. Whereas Tom Vaden moved to Nome in 1993 to work as a correctional officer, whereas shortly thereafter he began volunteering with the Nome Volunteer Ambulance Service, whereas Mr. Vaden spent 25 years training EMS volunteers, health aides, and emergency responders of the Bering Strait region, and it probably was more years than that. But over his 30 years of volunteers service to the department, he's held officer positions within the department for 28 of those years, responding to over 5,000 ambulance calls, most ever by a volunteer within the department. Mr. Vaden's excellence in volunteerism has been recognized statewide through such awards as EMS Trainer of the Year, Provider of the Year, and EMS Administrator of the Year. And it makes, although it's not included in here, we'll make note of the fact that Tom wrote the curriculum that was used by was used for a number of years for training health aides throughout the region. And that has been something of a legacy there that has definitely made a difference, not just to Nome, but to the region. Mr. Vaden's volunteerism extended beyond the ambulance department and the EMS training to serve as a race official, medic for the Nome Galvin Snow Machine Race, the All Alaska Sweepstakes Centennial Anniversary Race, and the Iditarod. He was active in local emergency planning to the extent that he is frequently nominated for chair of local and statewide local emergency planning committees. Whereas Mr. Vaden will retire from the Nome Volunteer Ambulance Department this month, whereas Mr. Vaden's professionalism and wisdom will be greatly missed by the department and the local EMS community, whereas the community of Nome and the greater Bering Strait region owe Tom Vaden a debt of gratitude for his service over the decades. Now therefore it be resolved by the Nome Common Council that we express our gratitude on behalf of the community to Tom Vaden for his decades of dedicated service and unwavering support to the community of Nome. And Mr. Clerk, I would ask for a roll call, please, on the adoption of the resolution.
Discussion.
Please.
So I was looking at, I'm just wondering the process for these resolutions of appreciations and if we do background checks on individuals.
No.
No. Okay. You know, my own thing and looking at the Nome Nugget from February 20th, 2020, this individual had pled guilty to theft, anywhere between $750 to nearly $25,000. What message are we sending to the city of Nome, to the employees, to the students? I mean, he probably has done a great job over the years up until that point. It's nothing personal. It's more ethics for me.
Okay, well, I guess in response to that, that issue was settled in the courts, and how that actually was resolved, I don't know, but that does not take away at all from all of these things that I just mentioned that Mr. Vaden has done for this community. Are there other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya,
No.
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution is approved, and we will have it put in a nice formal document that we can provide to you. Tom?
And don't forget a TMS group this week, so honor all your providers. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh, come on.
Which is the shorter way.
All right, thank you. Then moving on to new business. Item number, first item, item A, is an ordinance. Mr. Clerk, will you read it by title only? This is in first reading.
Ordinance O-230502, and ordinance authorizing sale to Alaska DOT and PF of parcels adjacent to Stedman Street for road projects.
Thank you. This is to have DOT straighten up and rehabilitate Stedman. And unless there are any real questions at this point, essentially there's a couple of pieces of property in order to make the rights of way owned so that federal highway funds can be used. We go through this process. And this is similar to what we did with Port Road here a few years ago.
So this is a city-maintained roadway?
No, it's a state, yes.
We maintain a
I was thought we were
portion,
giving up.
portion of it above Fifth Street.
Okay.
This is a project where they're gonna go in and rebuild the street, do streetscaping, sidewalk improvements, so there's at least one side has a sidewalk, but if you look at it's all over the place with the land,
There'll be sidewalks on both sides.
parts of it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to pass ordinance 230502 on the second reading, public hearing, and final passage?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Piscoya. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. The ordinance is passed on to second reading. Now items B through H, all are first reading of budgets. And unless there is objection, we will take this as a lump. So Mr. Clerk, would you read B through H by title? Starting with ordinance 230601.
And ordinance 230601.
Just read through them, and then the council will take them as in its entirety.
230601, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the fiscal year 2024 City of Nome General Fund municipal budget, and exercising the power to assess and authorize the levy of a general property tax. First reading discussion. 230602, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt.
First.
Adopt the fiscal year 2024 City of Nome School Debt Service Fund budget. First reading. 230603, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the fiscal year 2024 City of Nome Special Revenue Fund budget. First reading. 230604, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the fiscal year 2024 City of Nome Capital Projects Fund budget. First reading. 230605, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the fiscal year 2024 City of Nome Construction Capital Projects Fund budget. First reading. 230606, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the fiscal year 2024 City of Nome Port of Nome Fund budget. First reading. 230607, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the fiscal year 2024 City of Nome Port of Nome Capital Projects Fund budget. First reading.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to pass ordinances 230601 through 07 inclusive, as just read by title by the clerk, on the second reading, public hearing, final?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Mark Johnson. Is there any discussion?
So do we dig into the details of some of these now, or do we wait till the second, what's most appropriate? I know.
Well, I guess if if you are going to be proposing changes to what we've done in work sessions, it's simpler to do. I mean, I guess normally we don't do those things before the second reading, but it would be helpful to know what they are.
Okay.
So You want to enumerate those?
Yeah, I was just, you get your hands up, so.
Normally, the Board of Equalization would have already had its meeting by now. And while anybody has recommendations, I mean, it's not an issue. But until we get through the Board of Equalization, right now, the staff is going on we're thinking it's gonna be around 11 mills. It could be less depending on what the council would do, and I was gonna recommend that we have a work session after the Board of Equalization meets. I'm losing track of time. The 30th, is it the 30th, 31st?
It's the 31st, 1st, and 2nd.
And then we would come back, I would recommend you come back and meet on the 7th. The reason why is because we also have two other committees meeting on Monday and Tuesday, and I kind of need to be there
So the 7th being Wednesday?
Wednesday, if that works for everybody's schedule.
So the 7th, at 7?
7th at 5:30.
5:30 if you want.
Yeah, I just had a couple of general comments. I know the bill rate is a big issue. The mill rate
Yes.
is a big issue this year, and I know we haven't resolved the BOE issues. I did some quick calculating, and based on a lot of conversations I've had with property owners and the assessor, a lot of property owners got a flat 15% increase in their assessments if they didn't do any improvements or anything like that. That was and I think the assessor confirmed that during his discussions here, that was kind of the broad increase that was put across the community on these properties. I looked at it and did some math, and if you basically if we have a 10.5 mill rate, your property tax payment will be almost exactly what it would have been at 12 mills had there been no 15% increase. So if you got a 15% increase in your property assessment, and the mill rate this year is 10.5 mills instead of 12 like it currently is,
It's
almost exactly the same.
It's proposed, the tax rate in the budget is proposed at 11.
And I'm just saying, if you're getting a sense of where the council is, I would recommend that we look at a 10.5 mill rate for FY '24. And I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I guess I'm just communicating that. I think that would be a really good target to shoot for.
And I will say that Nikki and I have been discussing that because we heard the 10.5 mentioned before, but I also want to say we have a lot of projects, as you hear me say often, that have been left behind decade, or at least. And I believe the city needs to address these things and not kick them down further down the road than the can has already been kicked over the last 10, 12 years. So that's the only comment that I would make on that. I know that everybody's looking for something that's a universal tax that ideally, except that you're affected, trying to make taxing as fair as possible. And that's also being discussed, not for making an action this year, but for discussion after this year's budget.
Sure. Yeah, I know we're talking, I think we're having a work session in June about a number of current exemptions and looking at that. That's happening. And I know it won't affect this year. A couple suggestions. One is, I know that the Nome Public Schools has a significant, I think the legislature just approved this, the one-time increase. And I know that's going to really help those, the public schools in getting some adequate funding. I would ask, I guess, between now and the next meeting that we look on our side, because I think at 11 mills, we have a projected 1.4 deficit or a draw into our, that we look at areas that we can cut or reduce the existing city budget. I know in previous meetings, we talked about some of the funds that we have in reserve for the landfill that aren't necessary. I know that we'd like to keep those for the future, but I think we can take a look at those and see what's actually required for the landfill and what's not. I don't know if we've looked at any positions that have simply not been filled. Like, I'll throw it out there, the assistant city manager position that we approved during the last budget cycle and in 12 months, and I know you've been trying, we just simply haven't filled it. If we were to reduce that position, that's probably going to shave, $175,000 off the budget, including benefits. So I guess between now and then, I'd like to look at things to make it as close to a balanced budget as we can, but yet look at the 10.5 mill rate so that property owners don't receive just sort of a double whammy this year in terms of higher assessments and a higher tax bill, kind of ease into it. So that would be my request to you.
And, I need to remind everybody that Nikki and I have already put a credit in there, I believe, of $650,000 for unfilled positions.
Mhm.
And some of those monies that are not in that will probably be also overtime to fill slots that we can't find people. When we are advertising starting this weekend, or this week, we've already started it, putting it in the AML for the port director and the city clerk's position. We won't probably have that same problem when the deputy chief retires, because that'll probably be an internal hire. So I can promise you, we're looking at all of that. We actually put it in and we're still not sure where the fuel is going. Our crystal ball is going to go down, maybe even more than we anticipated, and the numbers that we budgeted, and that's why I believe it's $39,000, another credit if the fuel drops lower than we anticipate. And I have a suggestion that when we meet, that there is another way we can put a credit in to help facilitate that half mil. I will also say, we have a lot of projects we're trying to get done, and, not every one will be able to be accomplished. So, that's why I'm more than happy to look at that. I mean, I understand the council, I've not talked to you as a group. I think any legislative body tries to give the best and the lowest tax rate to their residents, and I can promise you, city staff wants to give the lowest.
And I appreciate that, and I think this year especially, because assessments have really caught a lot of folks off guard. So that would be my request. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, move on then to a vote on the motion, which will pass these on to second reading, public hearing, and final passage.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcott.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is approved. Next, we have resolution 230503. Mr. Clerk, will you read that title, please?
R 230503, a resolution setting the City of Nome contribution for fiscal year 2024 Nome School District budget.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 230503?
Make that motion.
Second.
Councilmember Piscoya, Councilmember Henderson. Under discussion,
The city's contribution is 3.2 billion, which is like 1.5% from what you gave them the previous year, which was 3,150,000.
3,100,000. So
Sorry,
it's 50,000 more
50,000 more.
than last year. I was going to see if the superintendent, Jamie, was here. I don't know if anybody can speak to how the recent increase in legislative funding would affect the school board's budget. Curious, because I think based on the last work session we had, I think Jamie indicated that if at the time the legislature was in question whether the bill would pass, and she said that if it did pass, I think that would increase the school's funding by about 2.7 million. Does that ring a bell to anybody?
No, I thought it was about a lot less than that. I thought it was about 200,000.
Oh, no.
Okay, well,
So it was $185 a student.
But I think the base student allocation that we're talking about is, they just used it as what it currently is rather than what was going to be projected, because there's so much uncertainty within the legislature.
But it's been passed.
Right.
but the governor hasn't signed it yet, although.
So as far as I guess my question was, in looking at the school board budget, they had projected about a $1.3 million deficit because they were drawing into their fund. I'm assuming now with assuming my that 2.7 million number is correct, the schools will now have a 1.3, 1.4 operating surplus. So, okay. Yeah, I was just curious, and I guess my question was, and I know that the question I wanted to ask is, I know they've got some upcoming labor discussions. And if the question was, do you anticipate that a lot of that increased funding would go towards increasing, compensation through, that was my.
We'll get an answer for you.
Yeah, so, because don't we have to set the contribution amount tonight? It's not a first reading, right?
We
I
actually,
thought the dates have to be.
This has been a discussion for the last couple of days, but John, I really, as I remember, we had to set it by this meeting.
it has to be set within 30 days of it being officially transmitted to us, or the contribution becomes the contribution. And while the board adopted it on April 25th, I'm not sure when they transmitted it to us. The resolution seems to indicate that it has to be set by May 31.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
that's good to tell Scott under discussion that this is something that we deal with like every year, practically an unknown budget for the school district, because they are always waiting on the state legislation to determine something. And now we have like an upswing in a 1 year upswing in legislation funds going to the school. Yet we don't know the full ramification of that either. But we seem to be in this dilemma. Normally it's because they're way underfunded, and this is a flip year. But it's kind of a dilemma that we're always in. We're always passing this funding without having the full picture. But by the timing of the funding.
Yeah, I certainly support the when it's recommended. I was just curious about, what the ramifications would be on the budget. That was really the point of my question.
Maybe that they have a bigger surplus than to start next year.
Oh, yeah.
So
I didn't know if it would change some of the capital projects or anything like that they were planning on, so.
Sir, this school budget approval, in the ordinances, just got a message. It is May 31st. The city council shall appropriate the amount to be made available from local sources for money available for the purpose.
okay.
Didn't mean to derail the process.
No, I mean,
Asking the question.
typically it is done since I've been here at the second meeting in May. So,
Okay, I think, based on the information that we got before, we indicated the school board to build their budget around that. And then I'm sure we'll be kept abreast if there are changes as a result, if that funding actually comes through. And I guess, as I understood it, it was a one-time only. It is not a permanent increase to the BSA.
Right.
Okay, if there are not further questions, roll call please on the adoption of Resolution 230503.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya,
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
EE.
Thank you. That resolution is approved. Moving on then to Resolution 230504. Clerk, will you read the resolution's title, please?
R 230505 for a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with
GCSIT.
GCSIT Solutions for managed IT services for the city of Nome.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 230504?
I'll make the
I'll
motion.
make that.
Thank you. We'll take Councilmember Henderson and Councilmember Mark Johnson as the second. Mr. Manager, would you like to speak to this?
GCSIT, excuse me, different company, has been providing services to the city for more than a few years now. And the city is more than satisfied with the services that Bill Rondo, who is basically our IT person, has been providing it. And we think it's a reasonable monthly fee. Not much different than what we're paying now.
I was just gonna ask, because it said between 2008 and 2013, I was just gonna ask if there was a rate for services or, I'm sorry, the second whereas said it was between 2008 and 2013, they were providing managed services. It almost sounds like they're not currently providing services.
They are.
But it sounds like they are. So it's just, it's a long-term contract.
Right.
And, okay.
Yeah, what that was meant to indicate is that it's moving up on, 15 years or more that they've been providing services to us.
E2 was absorbed by GCSIT.
That makes sense.
If there are not further questions, can we have the roll call, please, on the adoption?
Councilmember Doug Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya,
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock,
EE.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Thank you. That resolution is then approved. Bringing us on to the next one, Resolution 230505. Mr. Clerk, would you read that by title, please?
R 230505, a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign a facilities use agreement between Nome Public Schools, University of Alaska Fairbanks, Northwest Campus, Bering Strait School District, and the city of Nome.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 230505?
Make that motion.
Second?
Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Piscoya, Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Doug Johnson. So that brings us to discussion. Ms. Amarock, President of the Director of the Northwest Campus, gave some background on this. City Manager spoke to it. Is there anything else, Glenn, that you, okay? Are there any other questions with regard to this use agreement?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions. I just wanted to make a comment that I think this is a great move forward to providing, using our facilities in town to provide mostly young adult education beyond high school. And I think it's a great movement forward for further using the facilities.
Thank you. See nods around the room. Roll call, please, then, if there are not other questions.
Councilmember Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya,
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock,
EE.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. That resolution is also approved. That brings us on then to reports. Utility, Mr. Morton, please.
Good evening, Ken Morton on behalf of your Nome Joint Utility System. And the last couple of weeks, it's been fairly status quo. Things are starting to warm up, so we'll be able to make more of a complete shift to the summer program. A little bit too early to do the start the jetting, but maybe we'll be able to move into it. Same with the line crew before they shift their efforts. Power plant. We have the engine overhaul for number 16 continuing. It's moving along, pretty status quo. Any questions about this or anything else related to your Nome Joint Utility System? Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to city manager.
I do want to also thank again the state for sweeping the roads. This was a Saturday, so you know it was costing them overtime, so I was actually, but I thank Calvin in an email. There's also going to be recycling of electronics during the spring cleanup of the town, and that's being conducted by Coeric. So we'll be working with them. I want to thank Cole. If you didn't see the vacuum cleaner running through Old St. Joe's, trying to sweep up the cigarette butts, because we're going to have a little campaign on non-biodegradable cigarette butts. They'll last longer than plastic bags. So, and that seems to be a problem with trash that we see a lot of cigarette butts. Cole is also, his department is also getting ready to put out more trash cans to encourage people to use them. We're going to add one behind the Chamber of Commerce building and more in Old St. Joe's Park. So hopefully people will use the trash cans instead of city property and everybody else's property to throw their trash. And I say that disappointed that so many people do throw their trash on the ground. And we see it at Old St. Joe's in particular. We've also had with the Seaside, we've been working actively with Seaside folks, and we've been able to actually hire a couple of them to come on to be employees with the city. We're working on the floating docks of getting them in. As we all can see, the ice does not seem to want to go away this year. We thought at one point we might have to even postpone the cleanup, but it seems that things are melting. I want to thank Cole and his crew for getting the tracers to work and to working with the state to getting some of the drains working. So it's been an easy melt this year. I hope I'm not jinxing myself. And I think that's about it. I know that I put in my minutes that we need to talk about ATVs, in my opinion, and how they're used. We're seeing, the city has its rules, the state has its rules. We're seeing young children driving their parents' ATV, where it's a single seat ATV. And yet, to remind everybody, Alaska has the highest number of traumatic brain injuries in the nation. So, and we're just seeing things that are scary. people driving far 20 miles an hour on city roads. They can drive the speed on state roads, but they're not supposed to be driving, for instance, if you're going out of town, you're not supposed to have an ATV on a street that's 50 miles an hour or more. So I think we need to have some conversation on that. Traffic safety, they're going to spend a lot of time in June and July. We're going to be doing, the police are going to be doing a grace period and working with people, not by ticketing, by issuing fines, and hopefully they can work to comply with city regulations. So I know it's going to be another controversial issue, but this past Sunday and the Sunday before, and on the Saturday, I was stunned on the number of people flying up and down state streets without license plates, which probably means those ATVs did not have insurance, and no one, anybody under the age of 16, was wearing a helmet. So, and I understand why the city, even on city roads, you're not supposed to operate your ATV faster than 20 miles an hour.
And have a license.
So you're thinking down the road, we should look at ordinances to match up city ordinance with state?
I think that would help. I think that would help. So, I'm not sure everybody understands that Front Street, Bering, Sepulveda, Stedman are state roads. Even a portion of Krutchuk Road, one portion is owned by the city, the other portion is owned by the state. So, and it's just how things have evolved. So, but I think it's also informational that we try to get people to operate ATVs in the safest manner and not having, as one report, a 3-year-old with his hands on the controls, and all of a sudden the ATV lifts up in the air and the child was not wearing a helmet. So there's reasons for doing this.
I don't know how we work into the campaign or the information. But these are licensed or permitted on city streets and state roads, so they should be following traffic laws. You see these four-wheelers that they decide they're a car when they feel like it's comfortable, and otherwise, they're going the wrong way on the one-way street. They don't bother stopping, I guess, it's a adjustment period for drivers too, in not having had to have these things, in the middle of the roads. But you'll be driving down, driving down Bering, and all of a sudden somebody shoots out there from Anson, no stop, no nothing. Same thing at the bridge at Jaffet there, going to the port thing. There's a stop sign there, but the four-wheelers, go blowing through there constantly.
And, we're just trying to get people to drive more safely. We don't have enough police, frankly, to do all this. But if, I don't want to see the city not addressing this. I know you probably don't, because no one wants to see a child injured. And I think that's the worst fear that many of us have, a child being injured. So I also want to let you know for the spring cleanup, which starts on Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day, we are actually, I've talked to several property owners, and we are taking the flyer around to encourage them to get rid of some vehicles or old snow machines or old ATVs. So hopefully we'll get a good response.
I got a question. It's about the, I'm just curious, maybe the chief can answer it. Are we close to full staffing for the police department, or how many police officer positions are vacant? I was just curious.
Right now we have, three positions still open. But we're still a lot higher as far as staffing goes than we were before. Our dispatch center, had a position or two short, but, we make do with the amount of officers we have currently. It's a matter of trying to get the right people. And that, I'd sooner work with, the right people rather than wrong.
Understood, yeah. I
The
was just-
selection process is, rather difficult, but we just recently hired and unfortunately worked a 12-hour shift previously, then had to stay up to talk to the psychologist today. And otherwise he'd be here right now. And that was a fellow by the name of James Turk, which he comes to us from Georgia. He is, and I'm rambling on, but I wanted to tell you about it. And he's a very experienced individual. He was a supervisor. He's certified in Alaska. He was formerly a sergeant in Bethel. And he seems to have a great demeanor. We've reviewed some of his writing and reports and stuff so far. It's been excellent. So I think we got a real good fellow here. And he's a year younger than me, so he's not quite that young, but still he brings with him a lot of experience and a good demeanor. So I think you'll be very happy with him.
I've just seen some new faces, so that's why I asked if we were filling some of these positions. So good job on getting the folks in.
We have another position that is supposed to be filled soon, Chief.
Right now, we're still working on, we got, of course, trying to match up. If you get somebody from out of state, for example, we got a couple candidates in the chute right now that we're doing backgrounds on and stuff. We want to hire somebody that has, say, no experience, but that is a lengthy process. You hire them, they have to go to the academy, that's 17 weeks, then they have field training after that, and then they may or may not make it. It's just a matter of take a gamble, but to try and get the right person, and they're more likely to remain one of the Nome officers for several years than maybe some of the other candidates. Now, we do have some great pre-certs. Like I said, you got to weed through them and make the selection, pick the best candidates. We have applicants from all over the United States currently applying to Nome, so that's a very positive thing. And that wasn't happening, a year ago. So, I'm trying to go through all the applicants and make sure that we do get the right candidates, for the future of the Nome Police Department.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, sir.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay, I don't know if Joy has anything. Is she there? Yeah, Joy has anything to add. She was up past 2 weeks. And we also had that open house for the Corps. So Joy, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I just thank you, Glenn. I just read your report, and I do know that the Corps is going to address some additional concerns that were raised at the meeting. But there were also a number of concerns that were raised that have already been addressed, so they will be pointed out in the elements that have already taken place to address those concerns. But unfortunately, the schedule was pushed back again, so their solicitation is looking like October, and the award to the contractor is looking in the neighborhood of April of 24, which is unfortunate, but it's where we are right now with the Corps.
Someone's got their hand up.
Councilmember Topcott?
Yeah, sorry, not related to the port or anything. And apologies if this was gone over. My sound was in and out a little bit, but on the MOU on alcohol portion, so I seek the city manager wrote that calls are down on Sundays. I was just wondering, is there any impact on Saturdays? Like, has anything spiked because people know that they won't be able to purchase alcohol on Sunday, or is Saturday generally status quo?
Our statistics that we are seeing right now are Monday through Saturday. Roughly, you could see a couple days it's 8, but roughly 9 to midnight are our highest percentage of calls relating to alcohol and drugs. You know, this was when we met with the representatives, with the representative each from CARS and from Northwest. We didn't quite have that information. The information was given to me after that, and I followed up with an email to them because we did discuss, okay, we're seeing such great things on Saturday. We're seeing ambulance reduction in calls, which is great for our whole public safety system. You know, is there a possibility of just reducing an hour a day so we could measure, you know, what the impact is? Is it going to mean that we're not taking calls till midnight, which is a little easier on everybody? I've also asked the the fire chief to look at scheduling his 2 full-time personnel, you know, around those time periods to see if, you know, we can target our services. But I know it was discussed with them, and we've asked them to go back to their management teams, and I suspect there's going to be some discussions over the next couple months about how to try to control the problem that we see with whether you want to call them homeless folks or displaced people. You know, how are we going to resolve that? Nest stopped sheltering a week ago, and you know, we're seeing a little bit of an uptick, but I'm trying to get the organizations to work together. So it's I feel like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill.
Thanks. Are those statistics something that you could share?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for the city manager?
I got one. I saw in the report on continuing to work on accreditation. When do we anticipate to be accredited at the police department?
It's going to be a 3-year process. You know, one of the things this year we're going to have to build, for instance, a holding lot for equipment that has been seized or whatever. We were having that security lot out at the Beam Road landfill, and people were climbing over the fence, breaking in, taking things from the vehicles that we had out there. So we're moving it so we can have cameras watching the impounded vehicles behind the police station. And there's a couple other building, you know, cameras and everything else. And we are moving documents over to the attorney to review that the accreditation board wants us to list in our plan. So we've been going at this now, Chief, a little over a year.
Wow. Yep.
So we are pushing that way, but it's not a snap a finger process. So hopefully, and when they'll come up, they'll review where we are and what else we may need to do. So we'll probably be giving you an update probably in the fall.
One of the things, now that the snow is melting, and a lot of the things that were previously hidden by snow are coming to light. And I happen to notice on Front Street that there's a couple of locations, one in particular, where there's some old vehicles and junk cars and just right next to the old AC building. And it appears to be a place where folks can hide, where they can do whatever, things that they shouldn't be doing in public. And I didn't know if the city has any mechanism in place to, I don't know if the building's occupied, but is there anything that we can do to kind of encourage folks to clean that area up, even though it's probably on private property? Is there?
Well, if they're parking on Front Street, they're not allowed to park on Front
Not on
Street.
Front Street in the parking lot.
We'll go over there and look.
Yeah, and again, this is just, things are melting and so.
I know the two vehicles that you're talking about, there's a guy that's living in the building there, he has both those vehicles there, so. I don't know if he's living there legally, but I know he's living there.
Just happened to notice that, so I didn't.
I'll ask the building inspector to look into it.
Thanks, that's all.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to citizens' comments. Are there members of the audience that would like to, Ms. Emrod?
Barb Amarok, thank you. I just want to say thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Silvana, Doug, and Mark for supporting the Welding for Adults training. And thank you, Mark, for your comments. And I just think this is a wonderful day, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others? Hey, move on then. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll for council member comments?
Councilmember Biswaya.
No comments, thank you.
Councilmember Tapcock.
Just congrats to all the graduates from this past week. That's all.
Councilmember Henderson.
Now that breakup's here, it's good to see folks kind of taking an initiative. Kids, I know there's a few parents out there that are helping get their kids out and picking up trash, and even though it's not part of an orchestrated or citywide cleanup, because that's coming, just folks taking it upon themselves to help clean up the community. So that's really nice to see. And I want to say a thanks to Cole. I know he's probably taken lots of comments about the condition of the roads, and I know he was waiting for the roads to kind of dry out before he could start. And I'm starting to see some of the work he's already doing, and as soon as it's dried out, he's smoothing them out, chasing the potholes, putting in fill, and so I appreciate it, and I know our trucks, my employer, appreciate it greatly too. So good job, thanks. That's all.
Thank you.
Councilmember Doug Johnston.
I have no comment, thank you.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yeah, I just had a couple of things. One is I had asked Glenn, our city manager, Steckman, to include that article from ADN regarding the potency of marijuana increasing, and also now that it's been legal for a number of years, the increase of different ailments that come from people who get addicted to smoking marijuana all the time. And I'm not so much gearing that towards adults who can make their decisions what they want to do, but more so because there's been a real uptick in incidents out at the schools regarding vaping. And again, I'll bring that up again and continue to bring it up until we really take a serious look at addressing it. But it is affecting our youth. Living a block away from one of the pot shops, I watch kids all the time that are waiting for their runner to go over there and get that, because it's a very addictive situation. And just like back in the 50s and 60s, when everybody said, "Oh, cigarettes is the way to go," I don't know if any of us that don't have some type of effect from family members or other people I know that have had lung cancer over the last 50 or 60 years, since that was a very popular thing to push. And that's why I asked for that article, just so it's a public health awareness regarding marijuana. I think it was a very good article. And on a, I guess, somewhat positive or more positive note, I'd like to publicly thank, I saw in Glenn's report that Brian Hammond was going to end his tenure, I guess, with the city as city clerk, and I'd like to publicly thank him for the work that he's done for the city for many years. And it's not always an easy job, especially when we have increases in property taxes or different methods of that the city makes a change in a method such as sales tax. Those are tough times for and the ones who usually take the brunt of it is usually our city staff downstairs in the clerk's office. And having put meetings together for boards and things over the past, I really appreciate the time and effort that's gone into making sure that we have a good agenda, and all the materials that go into our meetings. Those are put together by the city clerk's office. And I think that he's done a really good job with keeping the city on top of our meetings and our protocol for that. And I'd just like to publicly thank him for the time he's put in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll have a little lightness because no one is happy that Brian is quitting. Mark, can I ask you what your new fur baby's name is, since you're getting is it a golden doodle?
His name is Tanner.
Tanner.
Cool. Dogs are it. Next on the agenda, please, or on the roll call.
I believe that's everybody.
You're up. Okay, wow, that was fast. All right. Okay, moving on then, just quickly, a couple of things. I was in Anchorage on Tuesday night and went to a Red Cross function. It was their 23rd annual Real Heroes Awards. And I thought I was going with Chief West to accept this award that was being given to the Nome Volunteer Fire Department for their exemplary and outstanding work with the Bering Sea fire. At 20 minutes before we were supposed to meet, I rang Jimmy on the phone. I said, "Where are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm on 4th Avenue. I said, "Well, we're on 6th. Get over here." He goes, "No, I'm on 4th in Nome." It's like, you. Anyway, it was a real nice thing. I'll bring it here so we can actually see it before I turn it over to the fire department. But nice evening. Red Cross did a great job, and congratulations again to not just the fire department, but everybody in the community who stepped in to assist in any way, shape, or form that they could during that event. The statewide energy conference is starting in the morning, but I stayed for the council meeting, so I'll be a little late to the beginning. Down there for a few days, and we'll be hearing from various technologies, vendors, the governor and his statewide energy plan, and also the U.S. Secretary of Energy sent his deputy up to this, and he's actually going to pop into Nome on Wednesday and then fly up to Teller as well to take a look at things here in our region.
There's apparently been changes. I've been getting text messages during this meeting.
Oh,
It's Jay Stern's understanding that we will be seeing the Department Secretary David Turk here tomorrow. He'll be overnighting in Nome and then going to Teller on Wednesday. So I guess these plans sounds like you're showing up here tonight.
right, okay. All right, well, forget everything I just said about that. But it's good to have these people that have influence on the policies that impact us way out here on the edges of the earth or the edges of the United States that they get to see why, we hear our delegation repeatedly say, yeah, but Alaska is different. And we're glad they're coming to see that is true. Memorial Day is a city holiday, and the VFW, Peggy and Jeff, and those folks at VFW are planning the annual parade to the cemetery and on to drop the wreath in the ocean on Day. So for those that can get out and join in that short walk and to honor service folks that have given their lives, that is a great show of your patriotism. Also want to thank or congratulate all of the recent new members inducted into the Nome Alumni Association. I'm not sure how many folks, how many kids we actually had in high school that graduated this last week, but congratulations to each one of those that now have joined alumni status. Same thing for those at Northwest Campus that participated. And just to make note that Gray Harrison actually got his master's in police administration through that. So congratulations to Gray on that. BOE is coming up here after Memorial Day, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we'll get hopefully hear a little update from Arnie and folks. And we hope that our pile has diminished through the process. And state assessor is willing to get on the phone and at the beginning of a little bit of a discussion on how it works on the state side, if the council's interested in having him join.
Mr. Mayor, I'm also looking at potentially inviting Charles up here to assist the board.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Good enough. That's it. Have a great evening. Enjoy the sun. It's going to be here all summer. Unlike St. Lawrence Islands that has one day of summer, we're going to take all the other 99 of them. So, good evening, and the meeting is adjourned, and the time is 8:25. Thank you all. No, I'm looking for my printed ordinance book.
Principal of
That.
I doubt it got thrown away. Maybe misplaced.
Right.
Jeremy.